Earlier, I've analyzed the Batman myth and I've explained how the Batman myth reveals something horrible about fallen mankind. Now, you can watch those videos whenever you want. In this video, I'm going to analyze this fictional character, Magneto, from the X-Men series. Now, the term X-Men. Now, the X in numerology is a 6, referring to Helios, Apollo, the sun god. We know that. However, the word X, whether you write as EX or just as an X, can also refer to former. So X-Men, former men, former human beings, or so the term X-Men is coded in itself. But this video is not about the codified term X-Men. This video is about the character Magneto. Now, this character goes like this. He came from a German Jewish family and he was born as Mike Eisenhardt. Now, the Second World War happened and his family was deported to a concentration camp. And his mom and siblings were murdered in front of him and put in a mass grave. Now, he used his special powers and he survived. So, they sent him to Auschwitz to do forced labor. From there, he escaped. Now, he was in love with this female that he knew earlier, and both started a new life in Ukraine afterwards. However, the authorities in Ukraine figured out that he had certain powers. They came to capture him, and in the process, he destroyed half of a city. And now they were charging him. And the love of his life didn't want to continue with him because she was scared. But before she died, she gave birth to a twin. Now, after this guy, Max, he asked a Romanian forger to give him a false identity, and he continued in life like that. He ended up, long story short, in Israel, where he met Charles Xavier, with whom we became best friends. But though to their difference in opinion, a drift emerged between them. Now, Charles Xavier, at the other hand, he grew up in New York City in a wealthy family because his father was a nuclear scientist who earned a lot of money as a nuclear scientist. Charles Xavier went to the best schools. However, his family was dysfunctional. Long story short, he found out his father was killed by a man who later got involved with his mom and all that, a big tragedy. But anyway, Charles developed his telepathic abilities, he even used them in sports. But he stopped doing that because he realized, hold on a minute, as an athlete, I'm using special powers. That's not fair towards others who just use their natural strength. He eventually becomes a scientist also, and throughout the years, he met fellow mutants. Mutants being a human being with some special ability. And eventually, after meeting Magneto, he realized that, okay, we need to protect this subspecies called mutants from the general human species because mankind doesn't like their fellow human beings having a special leverage. So here's the difference between Charles Xavier and Magneto, or Max Eisenhardt. The difference is that Charles Xavier wants to coexist with the rest of the human species. Charles Xavier admits that just like from regular human beings, there are evil people, there are also evil people amongst mutants. So Charles Xavier wants to peacefully coexist with the rest of the human species because they are human themselves, but they are mutated human beings. And he wants to teach mutants to manage their powers well and to use their powers to serve others and to serve the human species also. And he also wants to keep the evil mutants in check as far as he can in a peaceful way. Now, Magneto agrees with Charles Xavier. However, there's a difference. The difference is Charles Xavier has an optimistic attitude. Magneto, due to his traumatic youth in Nazi Germany, he realized that, hold on a minute, Charles Xavier, what you're saying is a good vision. And I do agree with it. However, humans have proven throughout history that when difficulty comes, when they have to face struggles, they want to escape. And when they can't escape as a group, they look for victims to escalate upon. And the ones they escalate upon are always the ones who can't fight back or who are vulnerable. Now, mind you, Magneto was an Ashkenazi Jew, and he was a minority in Nazi Germany. And he witnessed many of his own people being slaughtered and exterminated. The only reason Magneto escaped was because of his special ability that the rest of his family didn't have. Now, Magneto sees the reality of how worldly people are. He sees the reality that if those people are not kept in check, they will slaughter and exterminate the mutants. Now, the mutants are just a portion of human species, just human beings with who have those special abilities, genetically and otherwise. Now, in Magneto's view, who follows this evolutionary myth, the mutants are an improvement of the human species. And as an improvement, they ought to lead the rest of mankind. Charles Xavier says, wait, the rest of human species, they don't want to be led by mutants. We just need to push them to live at peace with us. They live their life over there, we live our lives over here, and if we cross, we remain on peaceful terms. The vision of Charles Xavier is practical. However, Charles Xavier, I'm not saying he's wrong, but he does want to emphasize one thing, namely that the rest of human species has to be kept in check. And that's where Magneto comes in. Magneto is pointing out, look, those regular human beings out there who don't have mutant powers, they are at a disadvantage in daily life. We as mutants, we can benefit them. But hold on, are those people willing to be benefited by us? Are those people willing to admit that we mutants, we have advantages that can benefit them? Are they willing to be led? Are they willing to look for solutions? And Magneto, from experience, can testify that most of the people in the world don't want solutions, they just want to escape, or if escape is so expensive, they just want to escalate. So look at that. You have a population that doesn't want solutions, they just wants to escape, and when escape is not possible or practical, they just want to explode, victimize people to be at ease. And then you have a tiny population of human beings with special powers. that will not go well. So Magneto is thinking, okay, either all mutants are exterminated, or all the mutants exterminate the rest of the human population, or the mutants take a leading role in governing the human species so that both human species kept in check as well as the mutants. Now, when you look at this debate between Charles Xavier and Magneto, are they really enemies? No. Are they really opposites of one another? No, they're not. They're actually on the same team. They're actually in agreement with one another. The difference is Charles Xavier wants to do things in a formal, peaceful way, just that the human species can't come up with an excuse to attack. Because one thing Charles Xavier is aware of, if you overdo your display of power over common human beings, they'll get frightened and they'll use that as an excuse to explode. So Charles Xavier established his private school to teach mutants, listen, the rest of the human species out there, they get frightened of human beings with special powers. So don't go out there showing off. Discipline yourself to use your powers only in a beneficial way. Magneto, on the other hand, he focused more on, okay, what Charles is doing is good. I support that. However, that will not stop bad human beings from taking advantage and look for excuses. Charles Xavier knows reprobate human beings are a threat, but he focuses more on the integration part. Magneto wants a segregation and a domination by mutants because he knows that reprobate human beings will not be stopped by peaceful efforts. And he knows that the majority of the human species don't want to face the reprobates, so they will either side with reprobates or they will allow reprobates to run their course so that they can escape. So, is Magneto really the bad guy? No, he's not. Charles Xavier, or say Professor Xavier, also called Professor X, so Professor Xavier and Magneto are false opposites. A false opposite is a fallacy. You claim that one word is good because it's the opposite, so-called, of another word. An example of that is integration. You claim integration must be a good thing because it's opposite of disintegration. Okay, integration is the opposite of disintegration. That's true. However, does it automatically mean that because they're opposites, one is good and one is bad? No. Disintegration is when something falls apart. Now, if for example you have a company and the company produces typing machines, okay, and it's the 1970s, and now things are becoming more automatic, and eventually computers come up in the 1980s. So typing machines get out of fashion. Now, that company that produces typing machines, they can do two things. Or they can continue to produce typing machines and they can go bankrupt, or they shift towards producing computers, or they manufacture computer parts. So that company that produces typing machines they have to integrate into the new economy, the computerized economy that's emerging, which is a good thing. At the same time, the company disintegrates from the production of typing machines. So that company used to be on its own, producing typing machines. Now it becomes part of a bigger network to produce computers. So is the disintegration from being this on its own company towards being a company part of a big whole, is that a bad thing? No. So disintegration and integration are just two phenomena. One doesn't have to be bad and one doesn't have to be good. It depends on the context. Now, in the X-Men series, you have this false opposite. Professor X is seen as the hero who fights Magneto, who's so-called out of hand. But when you look at the story itself, that's not true. There was an X-Men movie in which Professor Xavier died. And there was one mutant who joined Magneto and said, "Man, I would have killed the professor if you just told me." And then Magneto looks at him and grabs him saying, I don't want to hear that anymore. Professor Xavier was a great man and achieved a lot. So hold on a minute. So Magneto wasn't really against Professor Xavier at all. No, he never was. The thing is, Magneto played his role in preserving the mutants, while Professor Xavier did his part. Were they opposites? Absolutely not. Were they in disagreement? Yes, but the disagreement was only about the manner and the policy that they would enact to preserve the mutants. Both want to preserve mutants, and both want to avoid conflict as much as possible. Both wanted to get rid of evil mutants. Yes, both want to get rid of evil mutants too, who would harm other mutants. So, Magneto, even though he had this, I would say, pessimistic outlook, that pessimistic outlook is a result of trauma that's a process. Now, it's not an excuse for him to remain in the trauma, absolutely not. The reason I'm discussing this is to explain to you how easy it is for people to be deceived. A lot of people that love the X-Men series, they keep seeing Professor Xavier as a good guy. And he is a good guy. He intervenes both for common human beings as well as for the mutants. But here's the thing. Professor Xavier is vulnerable, as well as the mutants that he's teaching. Professor Xavier and his school, they're both under attack on a regular basis. And when you examine the X-Men series carefully, you will figure out that often it's Magneto and the mutants on his side that end up preventing harm on Xavier and Xavier's school. On the other hand, Professor Xavier and his school, they often calm down when there's this contention emerging between the mutants and the rest of human species. However, because Professor Xavier's peaceful approach is more gratifying to the common individual, that's why they perceive him as the hero. Magneto, who deals with the ugliness that people don't want to face, he is seen as the villain by default. And this is how it goes in the world. When you address the elephants in the room, when you address the taboos and the weird restrictions, when you address the ugly things that have to be dealt with and processed, people will perceive you as a bad guy. They will either tell you to mind your own business, or they will say, "Who are you? Who asks your opinion? Do you have the credentials?" Or they will just flat out avoid you like you don't exist. Again, worldly people want to escape. They're all about being left alone in this fairy tale of peace. If you disrupt that fairy tale with facts and with proof, you become the victim of the masses. As simple as that. And Professor Xavier is not a coward. However, Professor Xavier is strategic in not highlighting the ugly and defective part of the human species. Because he knows that if he does that, he will be under attack. Now, what can we as believers learn from this X-Men myth? Because it's just a myth that began as a cartoon series that became movies. You know, the rest is history. But what can we learn from this X-Men series? It's the following. When you're dealing with worldly people, be strategic in how you deal with them. Be wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. I'm not saying that there should be Magneto believers and Xavier believers. No. In the series, you have this division, which are false opposites. Professor X and Professor Xavier and Magneto. No. In reality, believers have to be both. We have to be strategic to do things in a peaceful way because we're commanded in the Testament to, as far as it depends on us, to be at peace with all men. That's true. And this is symbolized in Professor Xavier. On the other hand, we're told to be vigilant because our adversary, the devil, goes around as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. So on the other hand, we have to be like Magneto, also being aware that, yes, we walk in peace with everyone as far as we can, but there are people who just don't want peace, they don't want harmony, and they don't want solutions, they just want to escalate. So then we need to be ready to be ahead of such people and to enforce repercussions on them to calm things down. Now, we shouldn't be only focused on that. However, we should regard it too. Unfortunately, amongst believers, you see this false opposite. A lot of believers are like Magneto, solely focused on the dark side of fellow human beings and how we as believers who follow Christ ought to be on guard of that. Saying, oh, worldly people are, watch out for the worldly people this, worldly people that. Other believers are more like Professor Xavier, focused on, listen, Christ is Lord, He wants us to be at peace, and that's what we do. Look, we do both. We do both. We walk in love towards everyone, yes, and when it comes to violent escalations or when it comes to reprobation, when reprobates insist on escalating, we take precaution and repercussions in the spirit world, and we take practical steps in daily life to counter and to be ahead of the violence. That's what we do. Now, I'm not saying that the X-Men was designed as a parable for believers. It was obviously not, because the X-Men is a pagan production. Some people claim that Magneto and Professor X were inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, in which Magneto was similar to Malcolm X, willing to be forceful when necessary, and Martin Luther King was more on the emphasis of integration, being at peace. Now, some people disputed this, saying, no, this can't be true. Anyway, whatever the actual inspiration for Professor X and Magneto was, doesn't matter for now. Oh, and by the way, Professor Xavier, the name Xavier refers to one of the founders of the Jesuits. So that may be a link, but that's something else. What I'm pointing out here is that those pagans who created X-Men and those pagan companies or that pagan industry that kept producing the X-Men series and movies, there is one thing they understand about the masses, and that is that the masses don't want solutions, they just want to escape. And when they can't escape, they escalate. That's why they designed two characters. One character wants to keep the peace, wants to remain peaceful as much as possible, and the other character is saying, no, we need to be ahead by dominating those people to prevent stuff from happening. Now, again, the X-Men is not what you call a Christian production. It is not a Christ-centered parable. It isn't. However, as believers, there are things we can learn from this fictional production. And one thing you need to understand, fictional productions are real. Why? Because they affect the masses. They affect people's behavior, people's perception. That's why I analyze comic book characters. And I decode, I decode what the pagans coded in their productions. Just like I did with the Matrix. Just like I did with the Batman myth. But anyway, do not fall for false opposites. Just because there is a superficial disagreement does not mean people are each other's enemies or they're opposites of one another. They don't have to be. Look, the same way you can look at the political spectrum. You have the left-wing politics and the right-wing politics. Right-wing politics is more focused on preserving this hierarchical structure in society based on whether something works or not. So you have an elite, people who have money, and then you have the people that are workers, and you have people in between who just benefit from the whole system. And you just have to be happy with your role and not complain, because if you complain, it causes harmony. So be happy with what you have and just get along. That's the conservative view. And in the conservative view, on the right wing, you can get more if the community approves. On the left side, they say, hold on a minute. What if you are born as a minority somewhere and the public oppresses you? Now, the public will not admit they're oppressing you. Does that mean now you have to accept tragedy and trauma in life just because people don't want to face themselves? No. The liberals give you an opportunity to escape this oppressive hierarchy. But this escape is short-lived because they don't offer real solutions. So you have the left wing offering false escapes, and those false escapes do work, but it's not deliverance. And then you have the right wing who keeps excusing the dysfunctions of the past by saying at least the dysfunctions worked. Now, when you look at it from the surface, it appears as if the left is against the right and the right is against the left. It appears like the left and the right are opposites. That's absolutely not true. Both left wing and right wing are part of the same bird. They're part of the same system. Both the left and the right, they want this hierarchy to remain. They're both in agreement with that. They both want this stable society to function so the public has ease. The liberals, on the other hand, realize that, okay, if you hold on to a traditional structure, and this traditional structure brings pollution, the public must have some relief or some escape from that pollution, or else it's going to get ugly. You're going to have bloodbaths. The right wing also admits this, so the right wing has its way of relieving itself, and that's through either military warfare or by starving a portion of the population through economic oppression. And they will say, well, it's just the market, or just have to work hard. Well, that will come with excuses. Now, if the left wing has its way all the time, everyone will be escaping in daily life and nothing will be get done. If the right wing has their way, people will be so resentful and you would have risk of explosions all the time. So the right wing and the left wing, they need one another and they complement one another. But because on the surface they have a different approach, and approach seems to contradict each other. That's why they appear to be opposites. And it's this false opposite that deceives people. Left wing, right wing, liberal, conservative, they're part of the same person. Now, some people say, Rashid, you can't say that. I'm a conservative. I don't support all that crap liberals are doing. And some say, I'm a liberal. I'm pro-choice, this and that. I don't like those conservatives restricting people. Both the left wing and the right wing, both liberals and conservatives, they're both clinging on to restrictions because they're both worldly. However, the liberals, they offer escapes as a way to restrict people. Conservatives don't want people to escape the system at all, but they offer scapegoats you can escalate upon. So both keep each other in balance. So you can't say, oh, the left produces a lot of pollution with all the escapes you're offering. I want to be on the conservative side. I want to be on the right side. No, because the right side also has pollution that you're stuck in. Or you can't say, you know what, the right side has a lot of cover-ups. Let me go to the left side because there they expose things. Hold on, the left doesn't offer salvation. So it's neither left wing nor right wing, neither liberal nor conservative. You also have this centrist view when people want to be just in between. It's neither that. The only long-term solution that will work for us is to do the will of the Heavenly Father. As simple as that. So don't fall for false opposites. Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ and be at peace.